She came home at 2:37 a.m. Not that I was waiting up, exactly. I don't wait up. I don't pace. I don't send the "where are you" texts. I'm not that guy. But something had felt off all evening. I'd gotten back around 9 after grabbing a drink with some coworkers. The apartment was quiet. No light in the hallway. No scent of her lotion lingering in the bathroom. No music playing from her ever-growing self-care playlist. I assumed she was out with the girls. She mentioned something like that the day before, but I couldn't remember the details. I remember thinking it was strange that she hadn't texted at all. Not because I needed her to. Just because she always did. The first thing I noticed when I stepped inside earlier that night was her favorite mug in the sink. White ceramic with a small chip on the handle. Life happens, coffee helps. A ridiculous thing she got during a trip to Prague and somehow grew attached to. But she never left it dirty. She babied that cup, washed it by hand, dried it with a towel, not even letting it air dry. And she had told me, before leaving yesterday morning, that she'd be in Berlin for a 2-day conference. It was something to do with branding and leadership. I pretended to listen, as always. So how the fuck was her mug in the sink? I didn't touch it. I just stared at it. Then I walked around the apartment like I was seeing it for the first time. Everything seemed in place, except the air felt stale. Too quiet. I walked into the bedroom and opened her drawer. It wasn't rifled through or messy, but I noticed the black lace set she wore only on rare occasions wasn't there. The one she once said made her feel like a weapon. It had its own corner in the drawer, and now it was missing. I opened the closet. A few of her go-to shoes were gone. Nothing dramatic. Not like she packed a suitcase. But I noticed the detail. The heels with the red soles. The expensive pair she usually avoided unless she was dressing to impress someone. I remember standing there, holding the closet door open with my fingers, and suddenly realizing how cold I felt. It wasn't emotional. Not panic. Not rage. Just cold. Like something in the pit of my chest turned off. A soft hum of wrongness I couldn't explain yet, but couldn't ignore either. Then I saw her phone, left on the kitchen counter. Screen down like always. Her digital leash abandoned. That was the moment I felt the shift. I didn't touch it right away. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at it for a full 5 minutes. My own phone buzzed. Slack message from a coworker. Ignored it. I was listening. Waiting. Maybe for something to confirm it. Maybe for the last puzzle piece to fall into place. At 11:04 p.m., it did. Her phone lit up. I didn't even flinch. Message from Andri Yoga flexed biceps man in lotus position. I let it sit. Let the screen go black. Then tapped it awake again. Another message. Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about the way you moan my name. I don't remember blinking. I don't remember any sudden heart rate spike. My hands didn't shake. I just picked up the phone, placed it in front of me like I was reviewing a document at work, and read every message. 3 months worth. Some deleted threads that I easily recovered from the cloud. Voice notes. Pictures. One of her in the mirror, her mouth open in a half moan, clearly holding the phone with one hand while the other was. I turned off the screen. There was nothing else to understand. But I wasn't angry. That's the thing. I know it would have made more sense if I'd flipped the table, punched the wall, maybe even cried. But I didn't. I sat still and listened to the building hum. The fridge, the wind outside the window, the faint sound of a car alarm 3 blocks down. Everything felt distant. Like I was watching someone else's life from the inside. She came in at 2:37 a.m., heels clicking lightly on the floor. I heard the key turn, the door creak open. Her giggle, too loud, too sharp, cut through the silence, followed by a fake whisper. Shoo, he's asleep. I didn't move. I heard her kiss someone. Lips wet and quick. Then another voice. Male. Not familiar. Sure he's home, he asked, low and cautious. Doesn't matter, she whispered. He sleeps like the dead. I stood in the hallway, still in the dark, and watched her silhouette move toward the bedroom. The guy paused in the living room, then followed. They didn't see me. I walked back to the kitchen, sat down, and waited. They'd be in my bed in less than a minute. The plan began forming instantly. Not because I was panicking. Not because I needed revenge. Because some part of me, cold, deliberate, focused, already knew this was the beginning. And I always finish what I start. Looking back, I realize how quiet the unraveling was. Our life, on the surface, was smooth. We had our routine. Morning coffee together, separate commutes, late dinners, shared series before bed. She kissed me on the cheek every morning. Asked how my day was. Laughed at my stupid impressions of her boss. Everything looked normal. The kind of domestic rhythm that dulls you into believing nothing could go wrong. But it was all surface. Underneath, something subtle had already shifted. I didn't notice the cold until it was everywhere. The first real crack came when she said she wanted to focus on herself. Not in a dramatic way. It started with yoga on Saturdays. Then Wednesdays too. Then came weekend retreats. Self-care, she said. I'm learning to put myself first. You know, healthy boundaries. I nodded like any supportive partner would, because that's what I thought I was. Supportive, steady, predictable. But she stopped inviting me places. Not outright. It was more of a quiet exclusion. She began going to girl dinners with women I'd never heard of, from networking circles she never explained. I only learned their names when they tagged her in photos I couldn't even see, because one day her Instagram went private. And even then, I was restricted. Just cleaning up my digital space, she said when I asked. Too many creepy followers. I let it go. Then came the spending. She had always been smart with money. She used to track every dollar in a color-coded spreadsheet. Suddenly that stopped. I'd see $200 charges at designer outlets, receipts for lingerie boutiques she never stepped into around me, brands I'd never seen her wear. One night, I offered to carry a box from her trunk. She stopped me. Got visibly nervous. Said it was just a bunch of old clothes for donation. I waited until she fell asleep and checked the trunk myself. It wasn't clothes. It was a discreet black bag with a receipt still inside. Expensive perfume. A set of lace underwear. And a box of condoms. Large size. Not our brand. I didn't touch anything. I put it all back exactly the way I found it. A week later, she came home from another girls' night, smelling like the perfume. She had showered before leaving, said they were just doing face masks and wine. I just smiled, poured her a glass, asked if she had fun. She nodded, didn't look me in the eye. And then there was the sex, or lack of it. She used to be warm, eager. Not always, but when we did connect, it felt real. Intimate. Then it became routine. Then rare. Then gone. She'd mumble something about work, her cycle, a headache, her body image. The excuses stacked like bricks. Eventually, she just turned away at night, muttered, "I'm tired," and I stopped asking. Once, I reached for her waist while she was doing dishes. A simple gesture. Just a touch. She flinched like I'd caught her stealing. Her phone, once a constant buzz of messages and group chats, had gone quiet. No more pop-ups. No more giggles over text. Just silence. But she always kept it face down. And always on silent. Once, I walked past her while she was texting. She instantly turned the screen away and said, "You're hovering." I wasn't. She started going out more, staying out later, but giving less detail. "I just need time to think," she'd say. "You don't need to know everything I do." That part stuck with me. The way she said it, not defensive, just matter of fact. As if she truly believed it. Like intimacy had become optional. Like I was just a roommate now. Maybe less. I started watching more carefully. Memorizing patterns. Not because I thought she was cheating yet. No. I was past hope or jealousy. What I felt was sharper. Cleaner. Like a wire had been pulled tight inside me. My instincts were awake. I didn't know the whole story yet, but I knew the ending wasn't going to be soft. She smiled more around strangers. Laughed a little louder on the phone. When I'd walk into a room, she'd quiet down like she was switching off a version of herself I wasn't allowed to see. And yet, every morning, she kissed me goodbye. Still played the part. Still made coffee. Still smiled with her eyes. That was the scariest part. She was planning something behind the smile. Preparing for a clean exit. But what she didn't know was that I had already stopped being the man she remembered. And I was preparing too. It was a Thursday. She told me she had a full day of meetings, back to back, and that she'd be unreachable for a while, brainstorming lock-in, she called it. Like she was some high-powered strategist instead of a mid-tier marketing manager in a company that sold organic pet shampoo. I said nothing, just nodded and watched her slide into a beige coat I'd never seen before. It wasn't her usual style. Too fitted, too short. Like something she bought for someone else's eyes. She left without a kiss. That used to bother me. Now it was just data. Around noon, I was supposed to be in a meeting myself, but I stayed home. Internet issues, I said on Slack. Easy lie. I was sitting in the living room with my laptop, a second phone I bought 2 weeks ago, and a burner app that synced to hers via a small piece of spyware I'd slipped into her phone the day I helped update her battery settings. She hadn't even noticed. Most people don't when they're busy curating lies. At 12:41 p.m., her location pinged. Not at her office. Not even in the city center. It was a cluster of coordinates next to a shitty-looking motel on the east side, the kind of place with dirty blinds and hourly rates. It had a ridiculous name, Star Rest. I stared at the blinking dot on the map. No movement. She'd been there since 11:06. I didn't move. Just watched. I didn't text. Didn't call. I let the silence stretch. She came home around 6, her face flushed, hair messier than usual. I was in the kitchen making tea. She walked in like everything was fine. Said her meetings had been exhausting. I asked how the brainstorm went. She blinked once, maybe twice, then nodded and said something vague about good energy. That's when I noticed it. The scent. She was wearing a different perfume, sweeter, sharper, and unfamiliar. Not the warm vanilla one she used for work. This one was aggressive, intoxicating. Not hers. You changed your perfume? I asked, pouring the tea. She smiled, too fast. Oh, yeah. One of the girls at work had a sample. Figured I'd try something new. You like it? I sipped without answering. Later that night, as we lay in bed, she got a message. The screen lit up once, twice. She grabbed the phone, turned her back to me, and slid out of bed. I didn't move. I watched her shadow in the hallway. She tiptoed to the bathroom and closed the door. Locked it. I waited exactly 4 minutes. When she came back, she smiled again, forced, flat. Climbed into bed like nothing happened. The next day, I went deeper. I started digging through everything. Photos, metadata, archived chats. She had code names in her messenger app, Sasha_design, Din Wellness, Ali Yoga, all names I couldn't match to anyone I knew. But the conversations were intimate, way too familiar. Some were just emojis. Others had timestamps with phrases like thinking about last night or you're so bad smiling face with orange dot. Then I found something that didn't need decoding. A voicemail. Short. From a man, older sounding, soft voice. You were incredible. That little sound you make right before damn. Can't wait for Sunday. I booked the same place. I didn't blink. Didn't even breathe. I just pressed play again. And again. Until the words stopped meaning anything. The next morning, she repeated a line back to me. Something I had said the night before when we were watching TV. A stupid, offhand compliment. You have this look when you're thinking. You bite your lip a little. It's cute. I'd said it absent-mindedly, not even expecting her to register it. But now, she was on the phone with someone in the other room, thinking I couldn't hear her. Laughing. He said I bite my lip when I think. It's cute. You always notice the same things. She wasn't talking about me. She was copying my words, recycling them, handing out pieces of our life like party favors. That's when the last thread snapped. Not in anger, not even pain, just calculation. She didn't know who she was lying to. She thought I was the type to get hurt and fade away. But I wasn't hurt. I was awake. And now I was taking inventory. Every smile, every lie, every place she'd been. I was collecting it all. Not to confront her. Not to scream or cry or ask questions. That's what weak men do. No, I was building something. Quietly. Brick by brick. And when it was done, she'd never see it coming. She thought she was preparing her exit. She didn't realize she was walking into a trap. I didn't confront her. I didn't change my tone. I didn't even flinch when she smiled at me over breakfast the next morning, sipping coffee like she hadn't just whispered my words to someone else's ear the night before. I watched her laugh at some meme on her phone, screen tilted away, and nodded like I cared. Let her believe I was still asleep. That was the key. I wasn't angry. I was hunting. Quietly. Patiently. I started with something simple, a food delivery order. She said she was staying late at the office, big presentation coming up. So I placed an Uber Eats order to her workplace, something she liked, pasta from her favorite spot. Scheduled delivery. Paid. Tipped. Waited. 10 minutes after the order was marked delivered, I got a refund notification. No one by that name found at the location. I checked her geolocation on my clone app. It didn't ping the office. It pinged Star Rest Motel. Again, I made a note. Then I moved to phase 2. I created a fake Instagram account, built it up over 2 weeks to look like a real guy fitness coach, motivational quotes, beach pics, dogs, the usual bait. I sent it to my friend Dima, told him to write her. Just friendly, flirty, but not aggressive. If she ignored it, fine. But she didn't. Within 2 hours, she followed back. By the next day, she liked 5 of the photos. Left a comment. A fire emoji. Classic. Dima slid into her DMs with a harmless, "Hey, I swear we've met before." Her reply came 10 minutes later. "Haha, maybe. You look familiar," smiling face with halo. That was confirmation. Not of the affair. I already knew that. This was confirmation of character. Of habit. She was always hunting, even while pretending to heal. I let the exchange die. I had what I needed. Then I checked our bank statements. We had a joint account, which she rarely used. But that made her careless. I filtered by merchant. One hotel name popped up again and again, going back 4 months. Different times, different days. Mostly during work hours or self-care weekends. Always the same amount. Not enough for full nights. Hourly. I screenshot everyone. Then I searched for another name, her so-called friend Lyra, the one she always mentioned when she needed cover. I'm with Lyra. Lyra's having a rough time. Spa day with Lyra. Too convenient. So I followed Lyra instead. Not in person. That would be messy. Instead, I used her own digital trail. Found her Instagram. Public. Lazy. Through it, I found her check-ins, tagged photos, even a few stories where my girlfriend's reflection showed up, places she never told me about. In one video, a man's arm wrapped around Lyra in the background. Not just any man. Andri. The same one whose name was hidden under Andri Yoga flexed biceps man lotus position in her messages. A little digging, and I found his real profile. Business consultant. Divorced. No kids. Ran team-building retreats and loved quoting Stoic philosophers. Classic narcissist camouflaged as a mentor. I made a private folder. Saved everything, messages, transactions, photos, videos, timestamps. Created a timeline. Labeled it Asset A, ongoing operation. Because that's how I saw her now. Not a lover. Not a person. A variable. Something to control, study, and eventually break. Not with shouting. Not with exposure. With silence. With precision. Then came the bait. I changed the password to our shared Google account. Subtle. I waited until she asked about it. "Babe, I can't get into the calendar. Did you change something?" I played dumb. "That's weird. Try resetting it." She did. But I intercepted the recovery code, changed the number, gave her a fake one. It worked. For 3 days, I had full access while she thought she was locked out due to some Google glitch. That's when I saw the shared album. She didn't even hide it well. Buried among folders named Inspo and Quotes was a hidden archive of images, screenshots, selfies, hotel rooms, texts with names cropped out. I didn't open them all. Not yet. I didn't need to. I'd already seen enough. But I left a single clue. A digital fingerprint. A photo she didn't take, but would find. Her and Andri kissing in front of the motel. Taken from a parked car across the street. Blurry, distant, unmistakable. I uploaded it to her cloud drive. No name. No context. Just there. Waiting. Then I watched her. She didn't say a word. But she got quiet. Real quiet. Her phone buzzed more often that evening. Her hands trembled once when she poured wine. And when she looked at me, there was something in her eyes. A flicker of something primal. Fear. She didn't know what I knew. But she knew I knew something. The trap wasn't closing yet. I was just letting her feel the pressure. A slow tightening. Because the hunt had only just begun. Told her we had dinner plans. Nothing out of the ordinary, just the two of us. Friday night, 7 p.m. A new rooftop restaurant she'd been dying to try. She lit up, like I'd thrown her a bone after weeks of tension. "Finally," she said, putting her arms around my neck. "It's like you're trying again." I smiled, kissed her forehead, and said, "Wear that black dress I like." She did. I made sure of it. I made the reservation under a different name, paid in advance, and requested the table by the large screen in the center of the glass wall, where they usually showed a slideshow of cityscapes and ambient images. Except this night, the slideshow had one extra frame. She walked in like she hadn't lied to my face every day for the past 4 months. Her hair curled, lips glossed, that fake glow she wore so well when she wanted to control the room. She kissed me when she sat down, overly warm. I pulled out her chair like the gentleman she pretended to deserve. We ordered wine. She talked about work, laughed like nothing had changed. I let her. I nodded, smiled. My hands were steady. Then, as she reached for her glass, the screen behind her flickered. She didn't notice at first, but I watched her face carefully. Watched the color drain. The slideshow changed. Image 1. Her walking into Star Rest Motel at 1:11 p.m. Red coat, black heels, phone in hand. Image 2. Her wrapped around him in the hallway, laughing, his hand gripping her waist. Image 3. Both of them at the check-in counter, her signing the logbook. I didn't speak. I didn't even look at the screen. I watched her. She blinked 3 times. Her jaw twitched. Her fingers curled around the stem of the glass. What is this?" she asked, voice thin. "I think you know." She turned fully now, saw the sequence again. Her mouth opened, closed. Then the reflex kicked in. "This isn't what it looks like." I raised one brow. Said nothing. We were just talking. It's complicated. He's going through a divorce. I was just trying to comfort him. I asked. "I didn't plan it," she said quickly, eyes searching mine for softness. "It just happened. And honestly, if you'd been more present, if you didn't always live in your head, you want to make this about me? I'm saying I was alone. For a long time. You were cold. You were always working, always distracted. I needed something. Someone. I'm not the only one to blame here." There it was, the shift. From denial to blame. Like clockwork. I leaned in slightly, looked her in the eye, and said it calmly. "Then it's a good thing I stopped loving you long before you ever touched him." She froze. No breath. No twitch. No defense. Just stillness. That line hit her harder than any scream ever could. She opened her mouth again, but the words wouldn't come. I could see it. Her replaying every moment of the past few months, every fake smile, every late night, thinking she'd been the one in control. I stood up, slid a small black box across the table. Inside was her engagement ring. Not thrown, not shattered, just returned. A transaction closed. "Consider this dinner your last lie," I said. "You'll find the rest of your things already out of the apartment." I changed the locks. "Don't come back." People around us had started to look, but I didn't care. I wasn't loud. I wasn't dramatic. I was finished. She stood too, still trying to put something together in her mind, trying to summon the arrogance she'd relied on for so long. But it was gone. Whatever mask she'd worn cracked wide open, and underneath, all I saw was a scared, shallow woman who thought the world would bend to her desires forever. "I didn't think you'd find out," she said quietly. "No," I said. "You just hoped I'd be too weak to do anything when I did." Then I turned and walked away. She didn't follow. The messages started that same night. First a wall of text, denial, confusion, feigned outrage. What the hell was that? "Are you spying on me now? Who even are you?" I didn't respond. The next morning, another. "I deserve an explanation. You can't just ambush me like that and vanish." Then, a voice message, her voice trembling but sharp, an edge beneath the breathlessness. "You're overreacting. Nothing even happened. You saw a hug and made a whole movie out of it. You've always been dramatic." I listened once. Deleted it. That was her first tactic. Defense. Downplay. Deflect. Twist the knife just enough to flip guilt around. When that didn't work, she shifted. By day 2, the tone changed. "I'm not okay," she wrote. "I can't eat. I can't sleep. You humiliated me. Why would you do that if you ever loved me?" There was a photo attached, a tear-streaked selfie. Cropped tight. Performative. I stared at it for a second, then archived the message. No reply. That's what broke her rhythm. Silence. Not rage. Not bargaining. Just absence. I had become something she didn't understand, unreachable. And people like her don't know how to survive when they're not controlling the temperature in the room. By the end of the week, her messages became venomous. "You always needed control, didn't you?" she wrote. "You think just because you pay the bills and act calm, that makes you better than me? You smothered me. Everything I did was to feel like a person again." I read the words slowly, like studying the symptoms of an illness I'd finally diagnosed. Then she called. I let it ring once and declined. She called again. I answered. Didn't say a word. Just breathed. She filled the silence instantly. You think you're so fucking clever? What? You think this makes you strong? It makes you a coward. You couldn't satisfy me. Not emotionally, not physically. And now you get to play the martyr because I found someone who actually sees me. Her voice cracked near the end. Not from pain. From fury. From losing the narrative. I waited 3 seconds. Then said, "You talk too much when you're cornered." Click. She didn't message for 2 days after that. I knew what that meant. She was regrouping, reworking her angle. And when she came back, it was as predictable as it was pathetic. "I've been thinking. I wasn't fair to you either," she wrote. "Maybe we both made mistakes. I wish we could just talk. Maybe not to fix anything, just to understand." She wanted one last stage. One last conversation where she could slip into the role of misunderstood soul, float between blame and apology like a fog. But I wasn't stepping into her theater again. She had spent months scripting my part without asking if I wanted it. Now she was off script and flailing. I sent her one final message. Just 10 words. "You don't miss me. You miss your control over me." She read it instantly, left it on scene, didn't respond. I knew she wouldn't, because she had nothing left. No leverage, no image to maintain. She wasn't the victim. She wasn't the misunderstood partner. She was just a liar who got caught, a manipulator who ran out of lines. I didn't need closure. She did, and that's why I'd already won. I started with the legal side. Cold, clean, methodical. We weren't married yet, but we were engaged, shared a lease, a joint savings account, and the car was under my name. All the strings she thought were shared, I owned. I made a list of every account, every asset, every point of access she had to anything tied to my name. One by one, I cut the cords. I contacted the bank and froze the joint account, rerouting my payroll to a private one she never knew about. I called the insurance company and removed her as a secondary driver. I disabled her card access, changed all passwords, Netflix, Spotify, even the stupid meal kit service. Not out of spite, out of thoroughness. Every detail was a stitch, and I wasn't leaving any thread for her to pull. The car went next. I tracked it through the app, waited until she parked it at a friend's place, Lyra, of course, and had it towed directly to my office garage. Paid in cash. Switched the locks. No warning. No explanation. Just gone. She texted, "Where's the car?" And I left her on read. Let her feel that hollow panic. Let her understand she was no longer inside the perimeter. Then I printed everything. Photos, screenshots, location logs, hotel receipts, her messages to Andri Yoga flexed biceps man in lotus position, and the burner account she flirted with like it was a lifeline. I didn't send them to her. I sent them to her father, a well-mannered, conservative man who once shook my hand and told me he was proud to see his daughter with someone solid. I printed a short letter to go with it. No insults. No rage. Just, "I thought you deserved to know who she really is before the wedding." I included the wedding deposit receipts in case he wanted to try getting a refund. Practical. Next came the friends. The close circle. The ones who called me the Rock and said I was good for her. I sent a shared Google Drive link, just titled Clarity. No caption. No commentary. Just access. Within 12 hours, I saw the folder view skyrocket. Her inner circle started folding in on itself. Some unfollowed her. Some texted me apologies. One even forwarded a screenshot of her meltdown in their group chat. He's insane. He's ruining my life. No, I wasn't ruining it. I was just removing my part from the illusion she had built. At work, she wasn't safe either. Her company had strict internal ethics. And Andri, her affair partner, happened to be contracted as an external consultant on a project she was assigned to. I filed a quiet, anonymous report with HR, attached timestamps, emails, hotel check-ins during work hours. Nothing overt, just enough to make them investigate. I didn't need to see the fallout to know it landed. By Monday, her LinkedIn went private, and her name vanished from the company directory. I made no announcement. No dramatic public closure. I simply vanished from her narrative and rewrote mine without her. I hired movers, cleared the apartment while she was at yoga, left nothing but a note on the counter. "Don't contact me. You lost that right." I returned the keys to the landlord, paid the lease penalty, and left the deposit in full, because that was pocket change compared to the satisfaction of watching her story crumble from the inside. Every step was documented, every decision timed. I didn't rush it. I wasn't fueled by rage or heartbreak. I treated it like a strategy, like a chessboard, and I moved piece after piece until she had nothing left but an empty board and the echo of her own games. She thought betrayal was a moment, a quick stab in the dark. She never expected it to be answered by silence, logic, and precision. She never realized that I wasn't trying to win her back. I was erasing her and everything she thought she had power over. It happened at her cousin's engagement party. A formal gathering, white linens, champagne flutes, photographers weaving through clusters of overdressed family members pretending to like each other. I wasn't even supposed to come. She hadn't invited me directly, too awkward now, after everything. But her mother had, called me herself, said it would mean a lot if I showed up, just to be civil, and I agreed. Not out of pettiness, just timing. There's something about watching a person walk into a room full of people who already know what she's tried so hard to hide. It doesn't require theatrics, just silence and a good view. She walked in wearing a crimson dress, hair curled the same way she used to do when we were still pretending. Her posture was stiff, controlled, but her eyes scanned the room like a hunted animal. She smiled at people, nodded politely, but I could see it in her body. She knew something was wrong. The atmosphere had shifted. Conversations dimmed when she approached. A few polite nods, fewer hugs. Her aunt whispered something into another guest's ear with a sideways glance. Even the DJ hesitated a second too long before playing the next track. Then her father found her. He didn't hug her, didn't smile, just handed her his phone. She glanced at the screen, froze. I knew what he was showing her. The screenshots I sent him, the ones she never imagined anyone but me would see. I watched her lips move, trying to form a sentence, but nothing came. Her hands trembled. She looked around the room as if reality itself was collapsing. And it was, because her best friend Maria was already standing beside me. She had messaged me the night before. I'm sorry. I didn't know the whole story. She used me as cover. If you need me to confirm anything, I will. And she had. She told others, quietly, precisely. One by one, the illusion crumbled. Her circle had shrunk to none by the time the first toast was raised. Then Andrea arrived. I saw her straighten up when she spotted him near the entrance. A last thread of hope flickered across her face. Maybe she thought he'd still stand by her. He saw her, hesitated, then turned around and walked out. Didn't say a word, didn't make eye contact. Just left. That was the real blow. She stood there, frozen, trying to piece it together. She forced a laugh, tried to brush something invisible off her dress, walked toward a table like nothing had happened, but no one looked at her. No one offered a chair. People turned away. Her cousin, the bride-to-be, shifted her eyes and whispered something to the maid of honor. The music kept playing. Glasses kept clinking. But she was invisible now. That's when she saw me. She walked over, slow, like her legs weighed more than she could carry. Her voice was dry. You did this. It wasn't a question. I didn't answer. She stepped closer. You really couldn't just let it go? Her lips curled like she wanted to spit. You're pathetic. Vindictive. You ruined me. I took a sip of my drink, looked her dead in the eyes, and said calmly, No. You did that all by yourself. I just stopped covering for you. Her mouth opened, then shut. She blinked fast, chest rising in shallow, panicked breaths. For the first time, she had no script. No backup line. No exit. Just eyes watching her, judging, and silence swallowing her whole. She turned and walked away. No one stopped her. No one followed. I stayed exactly where I was. I didn't need a final word. I'd already said it. She showed up the next day. No warning. She stormed into the office lobby like a hurricane in heels, wearing a dress too sharp for a casual visit, clearly chosen to project control she no longer had. Her face was flushed, eyes blazing, phone clenched tight in her fist like a weapon. You destroyed everything, she shouted, her voice echoing against the polished glass and metal. You had no right to humiliate me like that. Heads turned. My coworkers stopped mid-conversation. Even my manager poked his head out from his office. I could have walked away, could have called security, but I didn't. I just turned and looked at her calm, silent. That unnerved her more than anything. She stormed closer. You sent those screenshots to my father? To my boss? You're insane. I had a life, friends, work, a future, and you set it all on fire. I said nothing. Her voice cracked, fury breaking through her words. You couldn't just let it go, could you? You had to ruin me because I stopped loving you. I tilted my head slightly. No, I said. You ruined yourself. I just stopped hiding it for you. Her mother appeared behind her, trying to calm her down. Marta, stop it. This isn't the place. But Marta kept pushing. He's making me look like a villain. Like I'm the only one who ever made mistakes. Her father stepped forward now, slow and stern. You didn't just make a mistake. You made a choice. Repeatedly. And now you're living with the consequences. That only sent her spiraling further. You've always taken his side, she yelled at her father. You all think I'm the problem? Maybe I wouldn't have done any of it if I wasn't suffocating. Then the front doors opened, and he walked in. Andri. The tension shattered like glass. She turned to him instantly, desperate. Tell them, Andri. Tell them it wasn't what they think. But he didn't come closer. He just stood there, pale, clearly caught off guard. I've lost everything, Marta, he said quietly. I got dropped from 2 contracts this week. No one wants to work with me anymore. This got out of control. Her face froze. You said you cared. You said I was everything. He looked at the floor. I didn't sign up for this. I'm sorry. And he walked away. Her shoulders collapsed. She turned back to me, trembling. You won. Is that what you wanted? To watch me fall apart? I stepped forward, close enough so she could hear me, but no one else could. I didn't want revenge. I wanted freedom. This is just what honesty looks like. She didn't answer. Just stood there, broken and exposed, while the entire room watched her unravel. She left a minute later. No one stopped her. No one followed. And I never looked back. Her social media turned to silence. At first, there were a few hopeful posts, quotes about healing, about growth, about choosing yourself. But soon, even those stopped. Her so-called friends faded into the background. Some unfollowed. Some blocked her outright. One posted a vague story that read, "Some people confuse manipulation with love." I didn't have to guess who it was about. Her parents distanced themselves too. Her mother stopped replying to texts. Her father sent her one final message with a transfer. You're on your own now. The job didn't last. Her company let her go amicably, but it was clear they wanted her gone. Too much noise. Too many questions. No brand wants drama. Her coworkers stopped speaking to her. Even the ones she thought were loyal backed away. And Andri? He disappeared within a week. Once the spotlight turned sour and the comfort faded, he vanished without a word. She called. He never answered. She moved to another city, took a job at a small coffee shop, working early shifts and late nights. Gone were the luxury brands, the girls' nights, the yoga retreats. Now it was a cramped room in a peeling building and daily reminders of what she'd thrown away. But worse than all of that was the silence. The fact that I never responded, that I never looked back, and it gnawed at her. 2 months later, she finally cracked. She messaged me, "I still love you." I stared at the screen. She had taken hours to type it. I could see the typing indicator flash on and off for nearly an hour before it arrived. Then, just say something. Anything. The next morning, I replied. That's strange. Because I can't even remember your name. A week later, she appeared outside my new apartment. She looked thin, tired, worn down in a way no makeup could hide. Her eyes were swollen, her voice small. I ruined everything, she whispered. I was stupid, blind, but I did love you. I still do. She paused. I'm not the same person anymore. I swear. Just give me one more chance. One more try. I'll fix it. I'll prove it. She was crying now, hands shaking, knees almost giving out. I let her speak. Then I looked at her, not with hate, not with sadness, just with the distance you have for someone who used to be real, but isn't anymore. You're not my heartbreak, I said. You're just a lesson. She broke down. I turned to go. Before closing the door, I looked back one last time. She was staring at me like a ghost begging to be remembered. And I asked her calmly, what would you have done if you were me?